my straight personal trainer started canceling dates to spend more time with me. Gay love story. Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you enjoy emotional gay love stories with romance, powerful twists, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing viewers from all over the world. Thank you for being here. Now let's dive into today's story. You canceled another date because of me? Mason Reed asked, and the question landed between them harder than the 40-pound dumbbell. Logan Hayes had just returned to the rack. The gym was almost empty, which somehow made everything worse. Friday night had swallowed most of Chicago into restaurants, bars, movie theaters, and apartments where normal people were doing normal Friday night things. Mason, apparently, was standing beneath fluorescent lights wearing an old college t-shirt and wondering why his very straight personal trainer kept abandoning perfectly good dates to spend time with him. Logan grabbed his water bottle. I did not cancel because of you. Mason stared. Logan drank. Mason continued staring. Okay, Mason said. Then this is an incredible coincidence, because 3 different women have mysteriously lost access to you immediately after I texted. Logan lowered the bottle. You keep count. I am a graphic designer. Patterns bother me. That was a lie. Patterns did not bother Mason. This particular pattern bothered Mason because Logan was 30 years old, 6 feet 2 inches of impossible calm, and supposedly straight enough that Mason had spent 8 weeks training his brain not to interpret basic kindness as flirting. It had been going badly, spectacularly badly. Logan glanced toward the dark windows overlooking the street. Rain painted silver lines across the glass. His jaw tightened in that irritating way it did whenever he was deciding whether to say something honest. Tonight was not going anywhere. You were supposed to meet her 20 minutes ago. I canceled. I noticed. Logan looked back at him. Something changed in his expression. Small. Almost invisible. But Mason had become embarrassingly good at noticing small things about Logan. The way he rubbed his thumb across his water bottle when nervous. The way his voice softened whenever Mason admitted he was having a terrible day. The way he always remembered Mason hated treadmill intervals, but loved complaining about them even more. Logan stepped closer, stopping several feet away. I would rather be here. Mason forgot how breathing worked. Not dramatically. He did not collapse onto a yoga mat or require emergency assistance. His brain simply took those 6 words, examined them from every possible angle, and returned an error message. Here, Mason repeated. At work? Logan gave him a look. With you. Oh, that was worse. Much worse. Mason laughed once because apparently humiliation was his nervous system's preferred emergency response. You know you cannot say things like that to gay clients, right? There should be a certification about this. Logan almost smiled, but it disappeared before fully forming. Mason. There it was again. That voice. Quiet. Serious. Entirely unfair. Mason folded his arms. Why do you keep canceling dates? Logan opened his mouth. Stopped. For the first time since Mason had met him, the man who always had an answer looked completely uncertain. The silence stretched. Mason could hear the ventilation system humming overhead and rain tapping against the windows. Then Logan looked at him with an expression Mason could not name. It is complicated. Mason should have walked away. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was, because 8 weeks earlier, when he first walked into this gym and met Logan Hayes, nothing about this had seemed complicated. Logan was his trainer. Logan dated women. Mason knew better. At least, he thought he did. 8 weeks earlier, Mason Reed had walked into the gym with one goal: become slightly less winded whenever the elevator in his apartment building stopped working. Romance was not on the schedule. Neither was humiliation, although humiliation arrived within 7 minutes. Mason stood beside a row of treadmills pretending he understood the fitness assessment form when a calm voice behind him said, "You have been staring at that page for a while." Mason turned and met Logan Hayes for the first time. Dark hair, gray training shirt, easy posture, the kind of face that made Mason briefly forget every answer he had written. "I am reading carefully," Mason said. Logan glanced at the upside-down form in Mason's hands. Clearly, Mason looked down. Great. Excellent beginning. He rotated the paper and decided dignity was an overrated concept. Logan introduced himself as Mason's trainer, shook his hand, and immediately became irritatingly normal. No dramatic confidence. No motivational speech about transforming Mason's life. Logan simply asked what Mason wanted from training. "I would like stairs to stop feeling personal," Mason said. Logan laughed. That laugh became Mason's first problem. His second arrived 10 minutes later when Logan casually mentioned that his girlfriend had once convinced him to run a half marathon. Mason heard girlfriend and mentally installed a bright red stop sign. Safe crush, he told himself. Completely harmless. Like admiring an expensive house you could never afford and had no intention of breaking into. The girlfriend turned out to be an ex, but Logan still dated women. Mason learned that during their second session when Logan mentioned meeting someone for dinner. That should have made everything easier. Instead, Mason discovered that knowing a man was unavailable did absolutely nothing to prevent him from noticing things. Logan remembered details. Not impressive details, either. Tiny ones. Mason preferred afternoon sessions because mornings made him unreasonable. Mason hated bananas. Mason listened to old mystery podcasts while working. Mason's mother called every Sunday and somehow always found a new reason to ask why he was single. By week 3, Logan would hand him water before Mason asked. By week 4, their conversations wandered beyond exercise. "Graphic design sounds peaceful," Logan said one afternoon. Mason nearly dropped his towel. "You have clearly never received an email saying, 'Make the logo bigger,' at 11:58 at night." Logan smiled. "Fair. What about you? You enjoy telling exhausted people to do 12 more repetitions." "Only you." Mason pointed at him. "See, statements like that create workplace complaints." Logan laughed again, and Mason hated how quickly he had learned the sound. Still, everything remained explainable. Logan was friendly because friendliness was part of his job. Logan remembered things because good trainers remembered their clients. Logan sometimes stayed after their scheduled hour because they were talking, and Mason absolutely did not examine why those conversations increasingly lasted longer than the workouts themselves. He had rules. Very sensible rules. Do not flirt seriously. Do not imagine possibilities. Do not mistake attention for attraction. Most importantly, never forget that Logan dated women. Mason followed those rules beautifully for almost 5 weeks. Then one Thursday evening, their 60-minute session ended. The gym slowly emptied, and Logan sat beside him with 2 protein shakes while they talked until closing. Mason checked the clock and realized nearly 2 hours had passed. Logan looked just as surprised. Neither of them moved. Neither of them moved until the overhead lights flickered once. The gym manager's increasingly unsubtle reminder that friendship was apparently not an acceptable reason to delay closing. Mason looked at the clock again. "We have been sitting here for 53 minutes. Logan glanced toward the front desk. "That explains why Kevin keeps staring at us." Across the room, Kevin pointed dramatically at the exit. Mason stood. "I think we are being evicted." Logan grabbed both empty cups and followed him outside. Chicago had turned cold while they were talking, the sidewalk shining beneath streetlights after an earlier rain. Mason expected the usual goodbye. Instead, Logan walked beside him for 3 blocks. Then 4. "My train station is the other direction," Mason finally said. Logan stopped. "I know." Mason stared at him. Logan stared back. "Then why are you walking this way?" "We were talking." There it was again. An explanation so simple Mason almost believed it. Almost. After that night, 60 minutes became more of a suggestion than an actual schedule. Their Tuesday session ended with 20 minutes discussing terrible movies. Thursday became a debate about whether deep dish pizza counted as pizza or architectural engineering. Saturday somehow ended at a coffee shop 2 doors down from the gym. Mason kept waiting for Logan to notice that this was unusual. Logan seemed completely unaware. Worse, he started texting. At first, the messages were respectable trainer material. "Remember to stretch. Drink more water. Your session is at 4 tomorrow." Then came a photograph of a ridiculous motivational sign Logan saw downtown because it reminded him of Mason's hatred of inspirational quotes. Then a message at 10:30 at night asking whether Mason had finished the design project he had been complaining about. Mason stared at that one for 6 full minutes before answering. He developed a system. Every time Logan did something confusing, Mason found the most boring explanation available. Logan remembered his coffee order because Logan had a good memory. Logan sent him jokes because Logan was friendly. Logan noticed when Mason changed his glasses because trainers probably had excellent observational skills. It was a strong system until Mason accidentally destroyed it himself. One afternoon, he arrived early and saw Logan finishing a session with another client. Logan was polite, encouraging, professional. The hour ended. The client left. No coffee. No lingering conversation. No questions about weekend plans. Mason frowned. Then he watched another session 2 days later. Same thing. Efficient. Friendly. Finished. "You are spying on your trainer now?" said a voice beside him. Mason turned toward Caleb, a regular he occasionally chatted with near the lockers. "Research," Mason said. Caleb looked across the gym at Logan, then back at Mason. "Sure. He talks to everyone. Not like he talks to you." Mason's stomach performed an unnecessary little flip. "He is straight." Caleb shrugged. "I did not say anything about that. Your face did." "My face is innocent." Mason rolled his eyes, but the thought followed him through the entire workout. That evening, Logan finished their session and checked his phone. "I should go. I have dinner plans." Mason felt ridiculous for being disappointed. "A date?" Logan nodded. "Good," Mason thought. "Excellent. Normal. Evidence. The universe restoring order." Mason smiled and told him to have fun. Logan left. Mason went home. And less than 2 hours later, sitting alone at his kitchen table after receiving an email that threatened to erase 3 weeks of work with the phrase "complete redesign," Mason stared at Logan's contact on his phone. He hesitated, then typed one harmless message. "Any chance the gym is still open?" Mason stared at the message for another 10 seconds before sending it, then immediately regretted every decision that had brought him to this moment. Logan was on a date. Normal people did not interrupt dates because a client had received an annoying email. Mason set his phone face down on the kitchen table. It buzzed less than a minute later. "The gym closes at 10. I can meet you there in 20 minutes. Mason blinked. He typed back that it was not an emergency, that he only needed somewhere to clear his head, and that Logan should enjoy dinner. The response came almost immediately. 20 minutes. Mason arrived expecting to find Logan already dressed for work. Instead, Logan walked through the front doors wearing dark jeans, a navy button-down shirt, and a coat Mason had never seen before. His hair was actually styled. Mason stopped halfway through tying his sneaker. "You were already at dinner." Logan placed his keys on the counter. "I had just gotten there." "Logan." "Mason. That is my name." "Very impressive. Why are you here?" Logan shrugged out of his coat. "Because you sounded upset." Something inside Mason went unexpectedly quiet. "I sent one sentence." "You used a period." Mason stared at him. "I always use punctuation." "Not when you were joking." "That was ridiculous." "Worse, it was accurate." Mason looked away before his face could reveal how much that tiny observation affected him. "The client rejected the entire campaign," he said. 3 weeks of work. They want a new direction by Monday." Logan nodded toward the empty training floor. "Then let us get your mind off it." They did not do a normal workout. Logan lowered the intensity, let Mason complain. Between exercises, and listened without offering one of those motivational speeches Mason hated. When Mason finally ran out of complaints, Logan handed him water. "Better." "Marginally. I have downgraded from moving to another country to merely changing careers." Logan smiled. "Progress." Mason smiled back, then remembered the obvious problem. "What happened to your date?" "I told her something came up." "Something did not come up." "I came up." Logan became very interested in adjusting a resistance band that did not need adjusting. Mason narrowed his eyes. "You canceled dinner because I had a bad day. I rescheduled." "That is somehow worse." "Why?" "Because now I feel guilty." Logan looked at him then, calm and direct. "Do not." 2 words. That was all. Yet Mason carried them home like they weighed something. He tried to file the evening under Logan being a good friend, although even that category raised questions neither of them had officially addressed. The following week, Mason learned the date had never been rescheduled. Logan mentioned it accidentally while they were getting coffee after training. "She was not interested after I left," he said. Mason nearly inhaled his drink incorrectly. "You lost a second date because of me?" "It was one date." "That is not the comforting defense you think it is." Logan laughed and changed the subject. Mason let him. He should not have, because 9 days later it happened again. Mason had stayed late at work and mentioned by text that he was grabbing dinner alone near the river. Logan appeared 40 minutes later claiming his evening had opened up. Then came the third time, A Friday night when Mason asked whether Logan wanted to stay after training, and Logan quietly checked his phone before saying yes. Mason saw the reservation reminder on the screen. 7:30. Table for two. He said nothing. Not yet. But the pattern Mason had spent weeks explaining away had finally become impossible to ignore. You canceled another date because of me? Mason asked. Logan stood beside the weight rack with his water bottle halfway to his mouth, and for one extraordinary second, Mason watched a professional personal trainer completely. Forget what to do with water. I told you. Tonight was not going anywhere. That is not an answer. It is the answer I have. Mason folded his arms. They had finally caught up to the Friday night that had been bothering him for weeks, and Logan was still behaving as though 3 canceled dates were merely an administrative coincidence. Fine. New question. Why would you rather be here? Logan's expression shifted, but before he could respond, a cheerful voice came from behind Mason. Hey, Mason. Caleb approached wearing his jacket and carrying a gym bag. Mason had spoken with him enough times to know he was funny, openly gay, and blessed with the apparently rare ability to communicate without creating an emotional puzzle. A few of us are getting coffee tomorrow, Caleb said. Actually, I was wondering if you wanted to go with me. Just us. Mason blinked. Like a date. Caleb smiled. That was the idea. Mason became suddenly aware of Logan standing several feet away. This was ridiculous. Logan dated women. Logan canceled dates with women for reasons Mason still did not understand. Logan had no claim whatsoever on Mason's Saturday afternoon. Sure, Mason said. I would like that. Caleb smiled wider. Great. I will text you. He walked toward the exit. Mason turned back. Logan was putting equipment away with the concentration of someone performing delicate surgery. What? Mason asked. Nothing. That was definitely a nothing with several paragraphs attached. Logan placed a dumbbell onto the rack. You barely know him. Mason stared. That is generally how first dates work. I am just saying. Saying what? Logan finally looked at him. His face was controlled. His eyes were not. Mason felt the realization arrive slowly, almost carefully, because it seemed too absurd to touch. Are you jealous? Logan gave a short laugh. No. Too fast. Mason stepped closer. You are. I am your trainer. That was not the question. Logan picked up his towel. Caleb seems fine. You sound devastated by his adequacy. Mason. Logan. Silence. There it was again, stretched between them until the humming lights seemed unusually loud. Mason's heart was moving too. Quickly, but his thoughts had become strangely clear. For weeks, he had watched Logan mention women and reminded himself not to care. He had swallowed every stupid flicker of disappointment because Logan was straight, unavailable, safe. Now Logan was standing in front of him looking bothered because another man had asked Mason for coffee. You cancel dates to stay with me, Mason said quietly. You text me when you do not have to. You spend hours talking to me after sessions. Now somebody asks me out, and suddenly you have concerns. Logan's jaw tightened. I do not have concerns. Then look me in the eye and tell me you do not care whether I go. Logan looked directly at him. Mason waited. 1 second. 2. 3. Logan said nothing. Mason almost wished he had, because silence was easier to dismiss when it meant nothing. This silence meant something. Logan looked away first. I do not know what you want me to say. Mason's frustration softened immediately. Logan did not look defensive anymore. He looked confused. Genuinely confused. Mason lowered his voice. Neither do I. For a moment, they were simply 2 men standing in an almost empty gym, both suddenly aware that the rules they had relied on were no longer working. Logan took a slow breath. You should go tomorrow. Mason nodded. I probably should. Logan nodded too, but there was no relief in his face. And that was when Mason finally understood the frightening part. He was not imagining the change between them. Logan felt it too. He just had no idea what to call it. Saturday afternoon arrived with clear skies, 48 degrees, and exactly 0 messages from Logan. Mason checked his phone anyway, once while brushing his teeth, twice while choosing a jacket, 3 times while walking toward the coffee shop where Caleb was waiting. This was embarrassing. Mason had a date with an attractive man who had communicated his intentions using complete sentences, and somehow his brain remained occupied by another man who communicated primarily through prolonged silence and unnecessary hydration advice. Caleb was already seated near the window when Mason arrived. You came, he said. I considered fleeing to Wisconsin, but the drive seemed excessive. Caleb laughed. The date was good. Annoyingly good. Caleb was easy to talk to, funny without trying too hard, and interested in Mason's design work. There were no confusing pauses. No mysterious mixed signals. No emotional gymnastics. Mason should have been relieved. Instead, when Caleb asked whether Mason wanted to get dinner sometime, Mason hesitated just long enough for Caleb to notice. This is about Logan, is it not? Mason nearly dropped his coffee. Why does everyone know before I do? Because you look toward the gym every time you say his name. Mason glanced through the window. The gym was half a block away. Wonderful. Apparently subtlety had abandoned him completely. He is straight, Mason said. Caleb leaned back. Maybe. But that is his question to answer, not yours. Mason went quiet. Caleb smiled without bitterness. You are nice, Mason. I would rather not compete with someone who is already taking up the whole room. They parted warmly, but Mason carried that sentence home. Monday should have clarified things. Instead, Logan transformed overnight into the most professional trainer in Illinois. 10 repetitions, he said. Mason finished them. Rest 60 seconds. Mason waited. No joke. No question about Saturday. No mention of coffee. When the hour ended, Logan checked the schedule. Your next session is Wednesday at 5. Mason stared at him. Are you being held hostage by a training manual? Logan frowned. What? Nothing. Wednesday was worse. No messages beforehand. No lingering afterward. Logan barely discussed anything unrelated to exercise. Mason told himself this was what he wanted. Clear boundaries. No confusion. Perfect. He hated it. By Friday, Mason had enough. Did I do something? Logan stopped writing on his tablet. No. Then why are you acting like we met yesterday? Logan's shoulders tightened. I am trying to keep this professional. Mason laughed once, without humor. Interesting timing. Mason, there is my name again. Usually followed by absolutely no useful information. Logan looked toward the empty studio behind them, then lowered his voice. Maybe you should train with someone else. Mason went still. Of all the possibilities he had prepared himself for, that one somehow hurt the most. You want to transfer me? I think it might be easier. For whom? Logan did not answer. Mason nodded slowly. Right. He picked up his bag. Logan stepped forward. I am not saying you did anything wrong. I know. This is not about Caleb. I did not say it was. Mason, please. Mason looked at him. Logan's expression was strained, almost pleading, and that made leaving harder. You wanted boundaries, Mason said quietly. You have them. The following Monday, Mason began training with another coach. Logan got exactly what he had asked for. No late conversations. No coffee. No messages from Mason after work. No reason to wonder what any of it meant. For 3 days, Logan told himself the distance was responsible, sensible, necessary. On the 4th evening, he saw Mason laughing with his new trainer across the gym and realized something deeply inconvenient. The distance was working perfectly, and Logan could not stand it. By Friday evening, Logan had learned that getting exactly what you asked for could be surprisingly miserable. Mason still came to the gym. That was almost worse than if he had disappeared completely. Logan saw him across the room 3 times that week, laughing with his new trainer, checking his phone between sets, moving through a routine that no longer included Logan at all. Mason was polite whenever their paths crossed. Hey. Morning. Have a good one. 3 weeks ago, Mason could turn a 5-minute cool down into a 20-minute argument about breakfast cereal. Now Logan received the same friendly smile Mason gave the front desk staff. It should have been easier. It was not. So when Logan's friend Tyler suggested setting him up with a woman named Emily, Logan said yes before he could reconsider. Normal plan. Normal Friday. Normal dinner. He repeated those words while sitting across from Emily at a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. She was smart, funny, and worked in public relations for a nonprofit. She told a story about accidentally sending an unfinished press release to 200 reporters, and Logan laughed. Then immediately thought Mason would have called that career performance art. Logan looked down at his menu. Stop. Emily asked whether he liked living in Chicago. Logan answered, then wondered whether Mason had finished the campaign redesign. Stop. Emily mentioned that she loved mystery podcasts. Logan nearly said Mason does too. He caught himself just in time. Stop. This was becoming ridiculous. Emily had done absolutely nothing wrong. Yet Logan was mentally bringing Mason into every conversation like an invisible third person at the table. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said. Logan looked up. "Sure. Is there someone else?" Logan froze. "No." Emily tilted her head. Logan sighed. "I do not know." Surprisingly, she smiled. "That sounds more honest." Logan rubbed his thumb along the edge of his water glass. "I thought I knew what my life looked like. And now?" Logan stared through the restaurant window at headlights sliding across wet pavement. He thought about Mason's terrible jokes, his dramatic complaints during lunges, the way he always said he was fine when he clearly was not. He thought about those extra hours after training, the texts, the coffee, the nights Logan had changed plans without even considering why. Then he thought about Caleb asking Mason out and the immediate, unreasonable feeling that had followed. "Now there is someone I miss," Logan said. Emily nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should stop sitting here trying not to miss him." Him. The word landed quietly. Logan waited for panic. It did not come. What came instead was recognition. Simple and terrifying. Mason was not an excuse Logan had used to escape bad dates. Mason was the reason those dates had felt wrong. Every time Logan had been given a choice between an evening with someone else and another hour talking to Mason, he had chosen Mason before he understood he was choosing anything at all. Logan apologized to Emily, paid for dinner, and stepped outside into the cold Chicago night. He did not rush anywhere. He simply stood beneath the restaurant awning and let himself finally stop arguing with the obvious. His phone was already in his hand when he opened Mason's contact. Their last conversation sat there, painfully ordinary. Logan typed 3 words. "Can we talk?" He stared at them, then deleted everything. Too vague. He tried again. "I owe you an explanation." Delete. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Tyler asked how the date was going. Logan looked through the window at the empty chair he had left behind. For the first time, the answer felt completely clear. He typed back, "She is great. I am the problem." Then he opened Mason's contact again and wrote the only thing that mattered. "I was wrong. Can I come see you?" Mason read Logan's message 4 times before deciding that the English language had become suspicious. "I was wrong. Can I come see you?" Wrong about what? The training arrangement? Caleb? The weather? Mason stared at his phone from the couch while an old mystery show played unnoticed on television. His first instinct was to demand clarification by text. His second was to pretend he had fallen asleep at 8:40 on a Friday night, like a 70-year-old man with an aggressive bedtime routine. Instead, he typed, "Okay." 25 minutes later, someone knocked. Mason opened the door and found Logan standing in the hallway wearing the same navy shirt he had clearly worn somewhere nicer than Mason's apartment. "You were on a date," Mason said. Logan blinked. "How did you know?" "You own approximately 4 shirts that are not gym clothes." "I recognize the formal collection." Logan almost smiled. "Almost. Can I come in?" Mason stepped aside. Logan entered, then stopped near the living room window as if the 6 feet between the couch and the coffee table required careful navigation. Mason remained standing. So, Logan repeated. "This is already going beautifully." Logan exhaled. "I owe you an apology." Mason's humor disappeared. "For transferring me? For acting like you were the problem." Logan looked directly at him. "You were not." Mason said nothing. Logan continued. "I thought creating distance would make everything clear. I thought if I stopped texting you and stopped spending time with you outside sessions, whatever was confusing me would disappear." "Did it?" "No." The answer came immediately. "It got worse." Mason's heart stumbled, but he forced himself to stay quiet. Logan rubbed a hand over the back of his neck. "I went to dinner tonight with someone named Emily. She was great. Smart, funny, easy to talk to. And I spent half the evening thinking about things I wanted to tell you." Mason looked down. "Logan, please let me finish, because I have been avoiding finishing this sentence for weeks." Mason nodded. Logan took a breath. "I kept telling myself I canceled those dates because you needed me. That first night, you had a terrible day, so it made sense. Then it happened again, and again, but you did not need me every time." His voice softened. "I wanted to be there." The room became very still. Logan looked nervous now, more nervous than Mason had ever seen him. "When Caleb asked you out, I was jealous. I hated admitting that. Then when you started training with someone else, I kept noticing every time you walked into the gym. Every time you laughed. Every time you left without talking to me." Mason swallowed. "What are you saying?" Logan shook his head slightly. I do not have a perfect label for what this means yet. I have spent my whole life thinking I understood that part of myself. Maybe I still have things to figure out. I do not want to lie to you about that. Mason finally looked at him. Then what do you know? Logan's expression softened. I know I miss you. I know I think about you when you are not around. I know seeing you with Caleb bothered me for reasons that had nothing to do with being your trainer. And I know I pushed you away because being confused scared me more than losing you did. He paused. Until I actually started losing you. Mason felt weeks of frustration, hope, and self-protection collide inside him. He could have asked the obvious question. He could have demanded a definition Logan was not ready to give. Instead, Mason asked the only question that mattered tonight. Are you choosing me now? Logan did not hesitate. Yes. Mason breathed out slowly. Good. Logan blinked. Good. Mason's mouth curved into a small smile. You came all the way here. I am not making this easy for you, but I am also not sending you home. 4. The first time that evening, Logan smiled fully. The tension in his shoulders eased. Mason pointed toward the couch. Sit down. We can figure out the complicated part one conversation at a time. Logan sat beside him, leaving a respectful space between them. Neither man rushed to close it. They simply began talking, and for once, neither of them pretended the conversation meant less than it did. 3 weeks later, Mason was halfway through a terrible workout when Logan Hayes walked into the gym carrying 2 coffees and looking like a man who had finally decided to stop being afraid of his own decisions. Mason noticed him immediately. Of course he did. 3 weeks of late-night conversations, awkward honesty, and slowly changing boundaries had not cured Mason of noticing Logan the second he entered a room. If anything, it had made the problem significantly worse. Mason lowered the dumbbells. You know I have another trainer now. Logan glanced at the weights. I noticed. Then bringing coffee to another trainer's client feels professionally inappropriate. Good thing I am not here professionally. Mason's new trainer, Daniel, looked between them, apparently decided he wanted no involvement in whatever this was, and pointed toward the locker room. You have 5 minutes left. I suddenly respect you enormously, Mason said. Daniel walked away laughing. Mason turned back toward Logan. What are you doing here? Logan held out one of the cups. Peace offering. Mason accepted it suspiciously. You remembered the order. I always remember your order. That simple answer landed harder than Mason expected. Logan looked different tonight. Not physically. He still wore the same dark jacket and calm expression that had once convinced Mason he was emotionally indestructible. But there was something settled in his eyes. 3 weeks earlier, Logan had stood in Mason's apartment and admitted he was confused. Tonight he did not look confused. Come outside with me, Logan said. Mason raised an eyebrow. That sounded alarmingly serious. It is. 10 minutes later, they stood on the quiet sidewalk behind the gym. Chicago had turned sharply cold, and Mason could see his breath beneath the streetlights. The windows behind them glowed with familiar fluorescent light. 8 weeks of memories lived on the other side of that glass. Their first session, the ridiculous arguments, the extra hours, the canceled dates. The night everything finally became impossible to ignore. Mason shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. Okay, you have successfully brought me outside. What happens now? Logan looked through the window for a moment. I spent a long time thinking this place was the problem. Mason frowned. The gym, the situation, you being my client, me being your trainer. I thought if I changed the situation, whatever I felt would become easier to understand. Mason's expression softened. Logan, let me finish. Mason became quiet. Logan stepped closer. Then I thought the confusion was the problem. That I needed to figure out exactly what this said about me before I was allowed to do anything about it. His eyes met Mason's. But every time I tried to find the perfect answer, I kept coming back to the same one. Mason's heartbeat accelerated. Which is? Logan took another step toward him. You. Mason stopped breathing for approximately 1 highly inconvenient second. Logan continued before Mason could hide behind a joke. I know I canceled 3 dates because I would rather spend an hour with you. I know I transferred you because watching you with somebody else scared me. I know I went on another date and spent the entire evening wishing I was talking to you. He paused. And for the last 3 weeks, every time we say goodnight, I walk away wishing I had stayed. Mason's humor disappeared completely. Why didn't you? Because I was still afraid. And now, Logan looked at him with an openness Mason had never seen during those first weeks together. Now I am more afraid of wasting another night pretending I do not know what I want. Mason swallowed. You should be careful. Logan's brow tightened. Why? Mason stepped closer until almost no distance remained between them. Because you are saying exactly the things I spent 2 months trying not to hope you would say. Logan's eyes dropped briefly to Mason's mouth before returning to his eyes. Mason noticed. Naturally. Patterns. Then maybe you should stop trying, Logan said quietly. Mason stared at him. Are you sure? There was no teasing in the question. Logan understood immediately. He reached up slowly, giving Mason every opportunity to move away, and rested one hand against the side of Mason's face. About you, Logan said. Yes. Mason barely had time to breathe before Logan kissed him. It was nothing like the uncertainty that had defined the last several weeks. The first contact lasted only a heartbeat, almost careful, as though Logan needed to feel the reality of it before he trusted himself. Then Mason caught the front of Logan's jacket and pulled him closer, and whatever restraint had survived between them finally broke. Logan kissed him again, harder this time, one hand sliding behind Mason's neck as Mason leaned into him. Weeks of interrupted conversations, canceled dates, jealousy, distance, and words neither of them had known how to say seemed to collapse into that single moment. Mason kissed him back with equal intensity, gripping Logan's coat as if letting go would somehow return them to the confusion they had finally escaped. Logan drew him closer, and the kiss deepened, urgent, breathless, and unmistakably real. When they finally separated, neither moved far. Their foreheads rested together, both breathing harder than the cold could explain. Mason kept one hand twisted in Logan's jacket. Well, he whispered. Logan's eyes remained closed for another second. Well, that was extremely unprofessional. Logan laughed, breathless and helpless, and Mason felt the sound against the small space between them. You are not my client anymore. Good point. Mason looked at him, and something in his expression made Logan's smile fade into something softer. Do you regret it? Mason asked. Logan did not answer with words. He kissed him again. Mason laughed against his mouth before returning it, and this kiss was different. Not desperate, not uncertain, but confident enough to feel like an answer. When they separated again, Logan kept his hand against Mason's cheek. No, he said. I regret waiting this long. Mason looked through the gym window at the place where all of this had started. He remembered the first day he had seen Logan and immediately built rules around a feeling he believed could never become anything. Do not flirt seriously. Do not imagine possibilities. Do not mistake attention for attraction. Somewhere along the way, every rule had become useless. Mason looked back at Logan. So what happens now? Logan smiled. Dinner. Mason blinked. Dinner. I made a reservation. Mason stared at him suspiciously. You made plans before knowing whether I would kiss you. I was hoping. Dangerously confident. You grabbed my jacket. That evidence is circumstantial. Logan laughed and reached for Mason's hand. This time Mason did not look down at their fingers. He simply intertwined them and started walking. Halfway down the block, Mason glanced at him. For the record, if you cancel this date for somebody from the gym, I am leaving you. Logan squeezed his hand. Not happening. Good. They continued beneath the Chicago streetlights, shoulders brushing as they walked. Mason had spent weeks studying patterns because he thought patterns could protect him from hoping for something impossible. But Logan had been showing him the answer all along. In every canceled date, every unnecessary conversation, every remembered coffee order, every moment, he chose Mason before he understood why. Tonight, Logan had finally stopped running from the pattern. And when he pulled Mason close at the next corner and kissed him once more beneath the city lights, Mason stopped counting too.